Hi, this is Stephen Bailey, and today we're going to cover Jainism in this lecture. I want to begin with a Jainist prayer. I forgive all living beings forgive me. My friendship is with all living beings. I have no animosity with anybody. Everyone should be peaceful, everyone engrossed in each other's well-being. Let all faults of everybody be destroyed. Everywhere, let everyone be in peace, prosperity, health, and bliss. One of the most distinguishing things about the Jainist community are the monks. As you walk around certain parts of India, you'll observe some Jainist monks with white garments, and some from the sect of the Digambara community walking around completely naked. As an act of complete renunciation. The Jains are similar in some ways to some of the more aesthetic versions of Hinduism, and to some degree, Jainism shares a lot in common with Buddhism. Buddhism and Jainism are both almost reformations. They are a kind of revolt, if you will, against at least the Brahmin aspects of Hinduism. And yet Jainism leans heavily into the aesthetic practice that the Buddha practiced for a while early on, but then rejected and chose what he called the middle path. Well, this is definitely not the middle path. This is a much more severe quest for renunciation and moksha. Let me just read here quickly some of the ways that Jains themselves refer to their religion and the things that they believe that are important to them. I think that you have to take this kind of a website as a response to the Western world, because as we've seen several times, Hinduism and Buddhism and Jainism, people in these faiths tend to talk about how they practice more than they talk about beliefs or doctrines. And so this website, I think, is kind of responding to the desire of Westerners to know what they believe. We are Jains. Jainism is our religion. Lord Mahavira was the last Tirthankara, the bridge builder, the forder, if you will, the one who crosses over to moksha. He was a Jaina who taught the Jain religion. He did not have any emotions like anger, ego, deceit, and greed. We follow his sermons, his teachings, in other words. We do not hurt any living beings. This is the great value of nonviolence in Jainism that Mahatma Gandhi borrowed from them. We always tell the truth. In fact, they go to great lengths not to even deceive anyone, even accidentally. We do not take anything without permission. And this actually is not just about stealing, it's about not receiving any more than is required to live. This is part of the discipline of renunciation. We control our desires. We possess only as much as we need. We help others. We listen and respect other points of view. We are vegetarians, therefore we do not eat meat, eggs, seafood, and poultry foods. We say the Namaskar mantra in the morning, and in the evening, we worship Lord Mahavira, and we'll try to be like him. Now, when they say they worship Mahavira, they actually don't believe that Mahavira can help them. The worship is more kind of a worship of what he taught, and showing respect for that path that he laid out before them. So he was born in northern India in the 6th century. As we've already seen, he was known as the great hero, the victor, the Ford maker. Was he the founder of Jainism? Well, because he's considered the 24th Tirthankara, the Forder, he's actually considered the last of at least in this huge era of time. Remember, in Hinduism and Buddhism, and now in Jainism, we have these incredible periods of time. And because there's no beginning and there's no end, everything is eternal, particularly in this faith, our souls are eternal. But within this particular era, there were 24 teachers, in some ways very similar to Buddhism, which believes in, even in Theravada Buddhism, in several Buddhas that come during a certain era, some that teach, some that do not. In this particular era, Mahavira is understood to be the 24th and the last. And so in some ways, no, he's a great teacher in a long tradition of teaching that falls in the same stream. He was a contemporary of the Buddha, and his birth story is very similar to the Buddha's. It is said that Mahavira was preparing in one of the heavens for his eventual descent. When the time came, he entered the womb of a Brahmin woman who was married to a Brahmin man. On that night, his to-be mother, Devanandra, received 14 symbolic dreams indicating she was going to give birth to a son who would be a great Brahmin of outstanding knowledge, and the two rejoiced. Indra sent angels to move the child to the womb of a woman of the Kshatriya warrior caste instead. He became a householder, married with children. Then at 30, his parents died, and he forsook everything for the life of an ascetic. According to the legend, in the 13th year of his practice, Mahavira attained the goal he was striving for. This kind of enlightenment is described as a kind of omniscience. The word here is similar to the Buddhist idea of awareness, but total awareness, an understanding. He knew and understood the universe and thereby mastered the path of liberation. From this point on, he was a Jina, a conqueror. The Namo mantra that we referred to earlier in the description, this is a quick summary of this prayer said in the morning and then sometimes at the evening. There's no strict practice. Jains are quite faithful in their spiritual practices, but in all these faiths, the answers you get are, you do it as many times as you want to or feel you should, and it depends on how much time you have and your circumstances. So there's a kind of built-in flexibility to these spiritual practices. I remind myself I will be kind to everyone. I will not hurt anyone. I will not get mad at anyone. I will not lie. I will not insult others. I will not boast. I will respect all lives. There's somewhere between 5 and 8 million Jains in the world, about 150,000 Jains in the United States. Many are very wealthy, although if they hope to make progress towards liberation, they're required to give up wealth before they die. One of the reasons the Jains have probably become so wealthy is that their practice of nonviolence does not allow them to do a lot of occupations. And so it kind of steered them away from farming or any kind of construction or anything where you might kill or hurt living creatures. And so they end up in being merchants and bankers and selling jewels and this kind of thing. And it's a very tight community. And in my experience, those that I've interacted with in New York City, very, very wealthy people, and their temples are magnificent. So this is kind of a strange, well, ironic kind of situation, given that their religion, perhaps more than any other, is a religion of renouncing the things of this world. The Jains introduced the worship of images into Hinduism. It is said, at least in the way that images are worshipped today. But ironically, a lot of sects, a lot of particular Jains, reject the worship of images. They do have images in most of their temples, not all. Some of the Jain temples have no images in them. There's a beautiful Jain temple in New York City with 4 or 5 floors. And on each floor, they have kind of set it up for the preferences of different communities within the larger Jain community in terms of how they want to interact with the images of the jinas. In some, you'll find on certain floors, the images are decorated and somewhat similar to the way Hindus decorate and dress the deities in their temples, but not nearly as much. And then in other floors of the temple, the images look like meditating monks who are just naked, and there's very little decoration at all. And some places there are small offerings given, and in other floors there were none given. There was just meditation and prayer in the rooms with the deities present. And then, as I said, there was at least one floor where there were no images at all. Here's a map where you would find concentrations of Jain populations in India. This is a symbol that is associated with the Jain faith. I'm going to try to explain it here for you. The outline of the symbol is defined as the universe. The lower part of the symbol represent the 7 levels of hell. The middle part of the universe contains the earth and the planets. And the upper part contains the heavenly abodes of all the celestial beings and the abode of the Siddhas, the enlightened ones, if you will. The raised hand on top means that, the raised hand means stop. The Buddha images sometimes are depicted with the Buddha holding his hand up in this same position. And in both cases, it both means nonviolence, but in the Buddhist case, it may also, and probably in the Jain case as well, it means to quench the desire that makes you, the attachment that makes you angry or aggressive. It's kind of like a stop sign, if you will. This gives us a chance to scrutinize our activities to be sure that we will not hurt anyone by our words, thoughts, or actions. The wheel that you see in the palm is, again, the wheel of karma, samsara, the life, death, rebirth cycle that indicates suffering. So again, we find that to live over and over again is the problem that's trying to be overcome here. The 3 dots above the swastika represent the 3 jewels of Jainism: right faith, right knowledge, right conduct. And it's interesting that if you break down, you can actually organize the 8-fold path of Buddhism into these very similar categories of right faith, right knowledge, right conduct. The 4 arms of the swastika remind us that during the cycles of birth and death, we may be born into any one of the 4 destinies, which include heavenly beings, the gods, human beings, animals, plants, bugs, and then the 4th level being hellish beings of various kinds. So we should strive to be a true seeker for moksha and overcome our social attachments, our worldly attachments, renounce the worldly life, and follow the path of a sadhu to be liberated, a renouncer. An alternative exclamation of the four arms of the swastika are that they stand for monks, nuns, male householder, and female householders. The swastika has no connection with Nazism. The Nazis borrowed this symbol from Hinduism and Jainism because they understood it to be an Aryan symbol. And of course, Hitler and his party were trying to connect Germany to an ancient Aryan race. The jinas. So we talked about the 24 jinas, Mahavira being the last and final. They are venerated and they follow the path of the jinas. This is the path of withdrawing from the world. Happiness is the product of non-action. Interesting. We're going to confront this idea of non-action in Chinese religions as well. So here are some basic beliefs. You'll see a lot of overlap with Hinduism and Buddhism here, but there are some distinctions that we're going to want to note as well. So samsara, cycle of birth, death, and birth, life, death, rebirth. This is caused by karma, but karma is understood a little differently here. Karma is believed to be actually physical matter. It's like dust that permeates the universe and sticks to the soul's knowledge of its true, pure nature. It's like dust on a mirror. And what we're trying to do in spiritual practice is get rid of this karma dust, so to speak, what often is called ajiva, non-life, non-soul stuff. Karma produces good results and bad, but in the end, karma is a chain keeping us in samsara. So one of the mistakes Christians from the West often make is looking at this system, and this is true in looking at Buddhism as well. The results of karma should not be understood as a moral judgment. It's just, it's much more of a mechanical result. And while moral actions produce good karma and immoral actions produce bad karma, the thing we have to wrap our minds around is that karma, acting on the real world as if it was real, is what is producing karma, whether it's good or bad karma. So again, I think I've said this before, we need to see karma much more like we understand gravity. It's not really a moral issue in the end. We need to recognize the impermanence of the material world and the permanency and necessity of purifying the soul. So the permanency of the soul. So one of the big differences between Buddhism and Jainism is that Jainism affirms the soul, and Buddhism teaches a doctrine of no soul, no self. Salvation is a personal responsibility. So very much like Theravada Buddhism, in Jainism, there's no God. You can't pray to the Buddha or Mahavira. Everything depends upon your efforts and your renunciation in this life. Ahimsa is a really important teaching. This is nonviolence. It is in some ways understood to be the primary teaching of Jainism related to the cessation of suffering and evil in the world and to overcoming negative karma. It's a key concept. And Jains are so concerned with causing no harm or suffering that they take great measures to protect life of any form. This can affect how a person grows food and which foods are appropriate for consumption. Jains, we've already seen, are strict vegetarians, and it also, this belief will restrict the kinds of work that they do. So you've probably seen, or you will see in these slides actually, some monks wear kind of a surgical mask that's to keep them from inhaling small organic life. They will sweep before they walk, before they sit down to get any living creatures out of their way. They don't want to step on any. Some even have a discipline of waking up before they turn over and sweeping the area and then turning over when they're sleeping. Part of becoming a monk is the ability to overcome the desire for external stimuli, including sexual relations, including too much joy over something, or too much attachment to food, alcohol, drugs of any kind, this kind of thing. So all these kinds of external stimuli are renounced. So the three jewels, right knowledge, right vision, and right conduct. So when we talk about right knowledge, we're talking about knowledge of the essence of the soul, okay? This is quite different from Buddhism. Probably one of the biggest differences, if not the biggest difference, is this belief in soul, self. Right vision, so faith in the reals of life, of the soul, all the main teachings. So the right vision is to see the world as Mahavira and the other holy jinas have seen the world and the path to liberation. Right conduct, the practice of beneficial activities that lead to liberation, such as abstinence from harmful activities that bind the individual, leading to a pure life. Jains do a lot of fasting, a lot of meditation, a lot of pulling back from engaging and acting on the world. Jainism sees itself as a science, a philosophy of religious tolerance, of ethical purity, of environmental harmony, and spiritual contentment. The cosmos goes through unceasing cycles of integration and disintegration. It borrows this from Hinduism, each about 1 million years. During each eon of decline, 24 great leaders will live on Earth, but never during the same time period or place. They achieve spiritual perfection. So these are the jinas, the Tirthankaras. Just as the universe has no beginning and no end, so everything in it. There is no divine manager, no God in the universe. The 24th Jina, Mahavira, taught us, excuse me, how to cleanse our souls from karma. The religious practice of an aesthetic leads to liberation, moksha marg. There are 14 stages of purity through which the soul passes to reach liberation. In this present cosmic era, one cannot go past the 7th stage. Okay, so this kind of Jainist belief means that they're even more pessimistic about achieving moksha than Theravada Buddhists are about achieving nirvana. I think you've heard me say in a previous lecture that Southeast Asians, when you ask them if they're going to achieve enlightenment, they just start laughing because it's so far off. And yet they do think it's possible. Here, because of the era we live in, you can only go through half of the journey until you are reborn into an era where it becomes possible to go to higher stages of purity. So Jainism believes neither in one universal world soul as Vedantic Hinduism does. Okay, so they don't believe in Brahman, in other words. nor in the all-encompassing impermanence, let alone emptiness, as many schools of Buddhism do that teach the no-self doctrine. Okay, so no Brahman, but no emptiness to the universe. Jains recognize an infinitude of beings, each with its own eternal identity, jina, soul, and each with its distinct experiences. All of these individual souls are considered jiva, which means literally life or soul. All living entities are included on the list of jiva souls, from blades of grass to human beings to the gods, and to some degree, even some inanimate objects like rocks and wood are considered to have souls of some kind. Buddhism and Jainism rejected the gods and the Vedas of Hinduism and were essentially as essential to liberation. And they focus on monks and the monks' pursuit of nirvana, or in the case of Jains, moksha. So while in Hinduism, you could achieve moksha through the deities, the gods, or through practicing the Vedas, not in Buddhism and Jainism. They both reject this. They both also reject the caste system. I don't think that's in my notes here, but make a note of that. So both of them are kind of reform movements against Hinduism in that sense, both in terms of rejecting the gods as a path, the Vedas as a path, and the caste system. So Mahavira stepped into a tradition, a Hindu Brahmin tradition that already existed. Monks did not accept food from people of other faiths. Buddhists are not required to be vegetarian, although some are. Jains, because they practice the discipline of ahimsa or nonviolence as well, but it's not a requirement. Many monks eat meat. Jains are strict vegetarians and will not eat roots because pulling them up is violent to living things in the earth. As we've seen, Buddhists deny the existence of the self, but the soul for Jains is universal and eternal, present in all living and non-living things. The soul continues in its purest form in nirvana. So basically, achieving moksha, liberation for Jain, is the cleansing of the soul. Nirvana, or moksha, is a state of bliss. Both affirm the use of meditation and yoga as a means of purification of the mind, the consciousness, both highlight nonviolence, although the Jains much more. Jains do not believe karma is the direct effect of a person's actions, while Buddhists believe it is. To some degree, Jains see karma as accumulating indirectly or almost by nature, in a sense. Here's a picture of a Jainist monk with his mask on, keeping himself from killing invisible organic beings. The center of Jainist practice is meditation. They take rigorous vows to extinguish attachment to material things to the point of walking around without clothes on. They will endure physical pain. They will fast. They take 5 vows as monks. First of all, ahimsa, nonviolence. Truth-telling, making sure that what one says is not only true, but cannot be misconstrued. So they go to a great lengths and often begin a statement by saying, perhaps, just in case somebody is taking a different point of view on what they have said. They don't want to be taken as not telling the truth. theft, thereby prohibiting a monk from owning any property. So this is not just stealing, but theft in a sense extends to any kind of ownership. Abstinence, which includes eradicating all fleshly desire. And the main one, of course, detachment. This is the vow, the most important vow. Divorcing oneself from the entire universe, including one's own identity, although they do believe in the self. Let's make sure we don't misunderstand that statement. All right, here are the Sanskrit words. And then this last one here, a true holy man, I don't know how often this happens, but within this tradition, the most highly regarded spiritual practice of a holy man would then to voluntarily fast until death. Let's see here. These slides now kind of walk you through several of the stages along the path towards moksha. You can read these as you have time and interest. We'll move on from that. So very similar to Hinduism and Buddhism, there is a way of thinking about the difference between lay people as householders and as monks and nuns. So when householders decide to undertake the renounced life, they must first live with monks or nuns for a time. If after learning more about religion and observing the renounced life, they still wish to undertake it, they take the 5 vows and go through a kind of ordination ritual to become a monk. Once you've become a monk, in addition to keeping these vows carefully, monks and nuns observe other special practices that set them apart from lay people. I have a little bit here on Jain scriptures, but look to your textbooks for more information on that. I'm not going to take time on this right now. I really would encourage you, I believe this link is already in Canvas. I would really encourage you to listen to this sermon on ahimsa from the Jainist monk who is in that video, because it gives you a much deeper appreciation for where they're coming and the importance of ahimsa. And the teacher there goes into quite a bit about the difference between the West that tends to lift up love as the highest religious teaching. And he makes a case for actually the highest religious teaching is ahimsa. So I think you'll find that interesting and helpful to you. These are 5 levels of human development, and you can take a look at these. I thought it would be interesting just to show you a comparison between Hindu temples, where you see so much color, a lot of deities dressed very ornately, and then you go into a Jainist temple, and almost all the images, the jinas, are depicted either in white marble or black marble. It's usually one or the other. And depending on what sect of Jainism you're in, there'll be more color or less. This is about as colorful as I have seen a Jainist temple become. So it's far more, they're really trying to push the path of renunciation, whereas Hindu temples are almost kind of drawing you to the deity, because of course, as we saw in the bhakti path, that is one path to moksha, is the worship of the deities themselves. Here is a less ornate kind of Jainist temple. You see there, the Jainas are just meditating naked there. And we have already made reference to the two different sects of Jainism, the Digbaras, sky-clad Jains that believe that the path requires renunciation of all possessions, including clothes. And because of that, this excludes women from the possibility of moksha. So they need to be reborn as a man before they can achieve moksha. Whereas the Swaivtambaras, who wear white robes, they also have nuns, women who wear white robes. And this creates the possibility that women could also attain moksha, although I wouldn't go so far as to consider this a kind of a view of equality between men and women necessarily. So don't take that, yeah, too far down that road. Some Jains, this way of Tambaras that wear the cloth, the white robe, believe that monks should dwell in a temple but should practice homelessness and wander as itinerant teachers from temple to temple. And so, yeah, these monks will, I wouldn't say they're homeless, they're just moving. Itinerant's a better word. Where the naked monks, the Digambara Jains, accept temple-dwelling monks. And although I have been in India and seen them out on the pathways as well with people bowing in front of them, even touching, what I observed was people touching the footprints that they had left in the mud and then bringing it up to their heads, wanting to be in close association with their holiness. Let's see. And then there is a disagreement between the two groups over their scriptures. So this Swaivtambaras believe that all but the last of the 20 books of Mahavira have survived. And I should say all of the 20 books except the last one have not survived. And so they accept as their canon what they consider to be the agamas and a number of sutras and commentaries directly based on them, where the Digambaras disagree and say that all of the agamas were permanently lost and the books that the Shwaivtambaras are using are inauthentic. Their canon consists of various sutras and commentaries written after that time. So both believe that most of their original scriptures were lost. The Swaivtambaras believe that the last of the 20 books did survive. And so that's a key difference between the two groups. All right. Temple worship. Again, we use this word puja, which is the word for worship used for Hindus. It's also used for Buddhists, although in Southeast Asia, there are different ways to pronounce that. In Lao, we say busa. Kernels of rice are left out on low tables. As acts of worship, believers may form designs consisting of swastikas with these rice kernels, 3 dots, a crescent, and another dot at the top. So these, you'll recall that these symbols come from the symbol of the whole universe that we went over earlier in this lecture. So I've watched worshipers in these temples pour rice kernels out, and it's a bit like making a mandala. Yeah, in a Tibetan monastery. The swastika is a common symbol in Eastern religions. We've already talked about that. In Jainism, it represents the energy of the universe with its 4 arms standing for the 4 types of souls. We've talked about that. The 3 dots stand for the 3 paths toward enlightenment. You'll remember right knowledge, right vision, and right conduct or action. The crescent represents liberation, and the topmost dot indicates nirvana. And so you might remember also that the jinas in the temple all had the single dot there. So this is not a third eye as in Hinduism, but a symbol of achieving moksha. All right, here are some different videos you can watch. Some of these I may be requiring you to watch in Canvas, so make sure you watch the ones in Canvas. These are just some optional ones. I think these are the links that are also in Canvas for the teaching on ahimsa as well. All right, thanks very much.